we need to talk about why Germany is now warning its citizens about the increased risks they may face while traveling to the United States, as well as, more broadly, the rapidly growing number of stories that show that even if you're in or trying to enter this country legally, if you're not a citizen, and in some cases, even if you are, you might be caught up in Trump's immigration crackdown. But starting first with Germany, I will say that the country has not issued a full-on travel advisory, right? They've just updated some existing guidance, with them warning travelers that tougher immigration enforcement under Trump could land some travelers in detention or see them face deportation. And notably, this is coming in response to several German nationals being detained trying to enter the country, some being held for days or weeks and allegedly facing pretty rough treatment in the process. One German tourist, for example, reportedly spent more than 6 weeks in detention, including 8 days in solitary confinement. Another reportedly spent more than 2 weeks in custody, claiming he was denied a translator and that he spent time chained to a bench along with other travelers, and both saying they were flown back to Germany without a clear understanding of why they were detained in the first place. And a notable thing here is in the second case, his partner, who's an American citizen, came down trying to get answers from officials, and she said they not only searched her car, but also saying that when she raised objections, 2 ICE officers detained her and took her to a separate room where she was subjected to a humiliating body search, with her then afterwards also chained to a bench for a time before being released. And then on top of those cases, a German green card holder, a permanent US resident living in New Hampshire, has also claimed to have been violently interrogated by border officials after returning from a trip to Luxembourg, with his mother also telling reporters that he had been held at Boston's Logan Airport for hours, stripped naked and put in a cold shower by 2 officials, also claiming that immigration agents had put pressure on her son to give up his green card, and claiming he was given little food or water and denied access to his medication for anxiety and depression. And actually, with that, he required medical attention at some point during the interrogation and ended up in the hospital. Although now he's being held in a detention center in Rhode Island, with US Customs and Border Protection Service telling the media that claims about his case were blatantly false without saying which points it disputed, as well as saying in a statement when an individual is found with drug-related charges and tries to re-enter the country, officers will take proper action. However, with that, I will say, as of recording, it's not exactly clear what those charges are, because he does reportedly have some misdemeanor cases associated with him from several years ago, including ones involving drug and alcohol abuse. So it's not clear if that's what they're talking about specifically or it's something new, but court records show that he completed a recovery program in Nashua in May of 2024. In any case, according to one immigration attorney, even with those prior charges, the alleged treatment of this man is extreme. And this is a big key thing that we're seeing is reports in general that immigration officers are employing more aggressive questioning tactics with immigrants and tourists trying to enter the country. At least that's according to lawyers and former immigration officials who've spoke to the Wall Street Journal, who also say that border agents are more frequently detaining people, with them also noting that officials are now requiring most immigration applicants to submit their social media handles with applications, and they've been increasingly searching people's cell phone contents at airports as well. And all of this may be in response to one of Trump's day one executive orders calling on immigration officials to apply what they referred to as enhanced vetting measures to visa and green card applicants, including immigrants re-entering the country, with lawyers also telling the Journal that the directive appears to have put pressure on officials to find more violators, with the goal of tightening restrictions on who is allowed into the country. Though I will say, with that, of course, Germans are far from the only ones being caught up in this. We're also seeing things like a British tourist being detained by US authorities for 10 days, reportedly due to the fact that she was planning to stay with a host family in exchange for helping out around the house and not having a work visa. There was also the case of Jasmine Mooney, the Canadian who was in an American Pie video and said she was held for 12 days in rough conditions, shackled at certain times. And actually, on that note, you had Canadian MP Charlie Angus today calling on Canadians to avoid travel to the United States if at all possible.
We have seen too many stories of citizens being pulled out of airport lines and being fingerprinted and deported as though they were criminals, citizens being kidnapped through illegal detention by ICE. And it's not just Canadians. We see the attack on backpackers, students, doctors, professors.
And with that, Angus also calling on his government to, quote, stand up for its citizens who are being denied their rights through arbitrary detention in the United States.
People whose phones are being seized and searched for any kind of incriminating evidence that they're somehow progressive or woke. That's not the actions of a democratic nation. That is the creep of totalitarianism. That is the creep of fascism, and we need to call that out.
But then from that, moving on to France, we're learning about a French scientist reportedly denied entry to the United States after immigration officers searched his phone and found messages expressing criticism of the Trump administration, with an unnamed source reportedly telling the French news agency AFP that the individual underwent a random check on arrival, during which his work computer and personal phone were searched, and authorities claiming that they found messages that expressed hatred towards Trump and can be qualified as terrorism, with them also reportedly confiscating his professional and personal equipment and sending him back to Europe the following day. day. You also had another source reportedly telling AFP that authorities accused the French researcher of hateful and conspiratorial messages, and actually with that, claiming he was briefly being the subject of an FBI investigation until those charges were dropped following his expulsion. However, according to the French Minister of Higher Education and Research, who said the scientist had been on assignment for the French National Center for Scientific Research and traveling to a conference near Houston, that researcher had simply sent messages, quote, expressing a personal opinion on the Trump administration's research policy. And of course, with that, unless there's more information that's set to come out, many would say that the possibility that criticism of Trump has been equated to terrorism is pretty fucking terrifying. Though it also may be, in the eyes of some, unsurprising considering how we've seen the question of free speech become central in other high-profile immigration cases, or with some of those not involving people entering the country, but people already living here, such as Mahmoud Khalil, or the detained Palestinian activist and legal permanent resident who still hasn't been charged with any crime, with him instead being deemed deportable on the basis of a little-known provision in the Immigration and Nationality Act giving the Secretary of State the discretion to deport non-citizens if there is, quote, reasonable ground to believe that their presence or activities in the United States would have potentially serious adverse foreign policy consequences for the United States. But in any case, a key thing here is that following Khalil's detention, Trump promised that it was the first arrest of many to come. And it appears that we are seeing that now as immigration authorities have detained a Georgetown graduate student by doubling down on the same questionable legal argument that they used to justify Khalil's detention. Right? And so this person is Badr Khan Suri. He's reportedly an Indian citizen in the United States on a valid J1 student visa, and his area of study is reportedly peace building in Iraq and Afghanistan, with DHS spokesperson Tricia McLaughlin alleging on X that Suri was actively spreading Hamas propaganda and promoting anti-Semitism on social media. They're going on to say that they have close connections to a known or suspected terrorist who is a senior advisor to Hamas. So this also, as Suri reportedly has no criminal record, has not been charged with a crime yet, and his lawyer said that Suri denied all of the allegations in McLaughlin's statement, with that lawyer then adding that he believed the accusations against Suri were seemingly based on who his father-in-law was. Which I will say, with that, his wife's dad is reportedly a former advisor to the Hamas leader whom Israel assassinated last year in Iran. However, you also have people noting that the dad has said that Suri was not involved in any political activism, including on behalf of Hamas, with him also having left his position in the Hamas-run government in Gaza more than a decade ago, does not currently hold a senior position within the group, and has in fact publicly criticized Hamas's decision to attack Israel on October 7th, 2023. With all this, you also had Georgetown saying in a statement that it was not aware of Mr. Suri engaging in any illegal activity, and we have not received a reason for his detention, and adding, we support our community members' rights to free and open inquiry, deliberation, and debate, even if the underlying ideas may be difficult, controversial, or objectionable. With him adding, we expect the legal system to adjudicate this case fairly. In this, his lawyer also released a statement saying, seeing our government abduct and jail another innocent person is beyond contemptible. And if an accomplished scholar who focuses on conflict resolution is whom the government decides is bad for foreign policy, then perhaps the problem is with the government, not the scholar. But with all that said, as we wait to see more stories like this, if they're going to come out or not, as well as if more information comes from the stories we even talked about today, I gotta pass the question off to you. What are your thoughts here? Because in addition to this being a news show where we're talking about what's happening, how it's being covered, what people are saying, that also includes you. I want this to be a conversation. In fact, some of your comments and replies on today's show may be in the next show and commentary, which we include at the end. Hey, thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this clip from the full Philip DeFranco show. And also, a big thanks to Squarespace for sponsoring our Clips channel. Turn your passion into profit over at squarespace.com/Phil, or use the QR code. Because whether you're launching a business or a lucrative side hustle, your website is your digital business card. It's the only space where you control the story, no algorithms or distractions. And with Squarespace, it's so easy because they got a ton of stunning professional templates with drag and drop editing that makes site design incredibly simple, no coding required. So get started for free at squarespace.com/Phil, or scan the QR code on screen and use code Phil for 10% off when ready to launch. Squarespace.com/Phil.